This is one of the series postgraduate dissertation or research project checklist. And this is the checklist for conclusion and recommendations chapter. And this is the last chapter of the main body of a research. Conclusion and recommendations are marked together with findings and analysis chapter. So the marking criteria is quite simple, and obviously conclusions are led by critical analysis and evaluation from the findings, and recommendations need to be critically considered and suitable to the research, and also limitations need to be recognized as well. Followed by chapter 4, findings and analysis chapter, it comes to conclusions and recommendations chapter, so which is normally the 5th chapter of a postgraduate dissertation or research project. It normally starts with an introduction as normal and then moves on to conclusions, where you would summarize the key findings from the research and by highlighting how the research have achieved the research aims and objectives in responding to the research aim objectives as highlighted in the introduction chapter. And it is very important in this section you highlight or address the contribution of your research to the literature. Okay? And then you may move on to research limitations if you haven't included this section in the methodology chapter. And if you have included it in the methodology chapter, you may not have to include it in here. And then move on is the recommendations. Okay, and then for recommendation section, so you may recommend to future researchers in response to the limitations of your research or how you conducted the research. And then you may recommend to the organizations or sectors or the industry in which your research is situated, which is normally the context for your research. Okay, and then you may recommend to the participants or any relevant stakeholders of the research. And then normally finishes with a summary section. Therefore, when we look into the checklist of the conclusions and recommendations chapter, you have to check whether you have provided a logical conclusions followed by the findings analysis chapter, and whether you have indicated you have met the research aim and objectives or answered your research questions as set in the introduction chapter. So normally conclusions is to correspond with introduction. In the introduction, you state this research is going to achieve this, yeah, and then in the conclusions, you see in conclusion, this research has achieved all those, okay? And then have you highlighted any contributions to the literature or any fresh insight generated from your research? And this is something very important, the contribution, okay? Have you indicated any research limitations without jeopardizing the credibility and the validity in this section? And as we said, if you have already included this in the methodology chapter, you don't have to worry about this in this chapter. And then have you made relevant recommendations in response to the research limitations? And have you made recommendations to the relevant parties involved in the research? And then have you made sure that there is no reference included in this chapter unless it is very essential when you try to make recommendations? And then finally, have you used number headings and subheadings in this chapter and ensure the logical sequencing between different sections? And hopefully this chapter is an easy chapter for you to construct after having conducted the research in the past few months. If you need any support, your supervisor is always your first point of contact who would be able to provide you support and guidance. So your module leader might be able to direct you to the right person for additional support. So always keep an eye on the module side as well, because it might contain important information which helps you as well. So finally, CASE, Center for Academic Skills Enhancement, is where you would also be able to find useful information and support. So on the right hand side is the CASE home web page, and then the email address is also there for you to use. I hope this presentation helps. If you have any queries, please feel free to get in touch with me. Thank you.